Hey, Johnru, how are you?
Good, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk with us today. I know you're a busy guy, you're in demand, and we really appreciate you making the time, especially with what we're going to talk about today with spirituality, faith, divinity. I want to let the audience know that I've been really trying to get you on for the longest time. I value everything you've always provided, not just to me when you've spoken to people or when I've ever listened to you speak, but you've always helped a lot of other people during the tough times, right? You're a person that went from the academic rigor of theology to studying, mastering divinity, but then also being a pastor, right? And I want people to hear your background, and kind of what got you started, the why. Why did you get intellectual and spiritual? Why did this happen? So I'll pass it to you. I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so actually, I have my Bachelor of Science in Electronics Engineering. Many people don't know that. And I actually worked as a telecommunications engineer in a telecommunications company in the Philippines. But while doing that, I've been heavily involved in ministry since I would say probably late teens, and that continued on even working full time, in what we call the secular industry, right? Long story short, I came here in the U.S. in 2016. And really, in my mind, I was wanting to continue
Thank you.
my engineering career, but God had a different plan for me. So again, long story short, I started my journey towards earning my master's in divinity from Bright Divinity School at Texas Christian University. Go Frogs! And actually finished that in 2022.
And here's the thing that it's a lot of people don't get a chance to ask a lot of folks, such as yourself, that has studied, divinity, get the master's divinity, become a pastor. I've had the pleasure whenever I've traveled overseas to run into men of God, men of faith, right, and have a chance to have some really good conversations. But you know what it was? I tend to forget because of how well the conversation is going. Tend to forget to ask, like, why did you get into it? How did you get into
Mm,
it? So I
uh-huh.
want to ask you,
Yeah.
I love what you said earlier. God had a different plan, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
Why do you think God had a different plan for you in regards to you got engineering and then
Hmm.
you went in and got your master's of divinity,
Hmm.
pastor? What led you that way to continue to do that?
Yeah. So if I may share a quick story, when I was a kid, thank you. When I was a kid at church, people would tell me, John, you're going to be a pastor someday. And I was like, no, I want to earn lots of money. And that actually drove me to really pursue my engineering degree. I think I've been trying, God has been chasing me, and I've been trying to, I guess, hide and dismiss, right? But God has his own ways of pursuing me and pursuing us. And God will use situations and people. And as a matter of fact, for me, it was our pastor, Reverend Kaya Kershaw, here in the US, my very first pastor here, who actually encouraged me or really asked me if I wanted to, do seminary, attend seminary. But really in my mind, I was like, I'm not sure about studying all over again because I earned my bachelor's in engineering in 2006. So it's been, there's a huge gap, and theology, engineering, those are two different things. But again, God had his way of reaching out to me. Yeah, it wasn't easy. At first, I was like, why am I doing this? I wasn't really 100% sold out, but God paved the way, not just through support from my family, but also from church friends, even people supporting me financially. As we know, it's expensive to be in school here in the U.S. Yeah. And to answer your question, and I've been saying a lot, but it all boils down to, us having plans, but on top of it, God will still find his way to chase us, and that would happen to me.
Yeah, amen to that. I think what I hear from you, and I've known you for a long time, right? Listen to you, listen to the stuff, and have had spent, just time listening and watching. And again, the people were not wrong, right? You definitely have a presence to you when you talk and you give people hope.
Thank you.
That's the biggest thing that a lot of people don't have today, right? And when I think about what you just said, right, like you hear your intellectual pursuit, right? Then it became a spiritual one because as you alluded to multiple times now, God had a different plan. And then, you hear from people like, you're
Mhm,
going to be priest one day. You're going to be someone that's going to be a pastor. And, look what you did. Right. And I think when you were saying like, hey, this was the knowledge versus ritual, right? I guess to me, what would you say in your experience right now is difference between knowing the mechanics of God and what you studied and the experience, which is theology and the divinity, and then
mhm,
the experience of God, which is faith, right? Those are two
mhm,
different things that people would say. What's your
mhm.
thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I always believe in what we call double agency, meaning God initiating it, or what we call divine intervention, and us humans having our own participation, or I would say uh divine intervention and human response. So it's always about, like what you said, having faith, and not just waiting passively, not just having it in mind, but really, having faith in action. And that doesn't mean that we're competing with God, right? But it's really about us trusting and obeying God, and knowing that, God empowers us, and God will, make his plans beautiful for us, even if it doesn't start good, or if even if it's ugly at some points, God will surely pave his way. And again, it's not about just intellectual knowledge, but it's all about having faith in him and having a relationship with him, really.
Yeah, and then relationships, I think, is important, right? There was, my family as a lot of others, that come from, different cultures that rely on faith. A lot of it, is strong. A lot of it also isn't, right? And I think from, one thing you became a pastor, right? So, but you never became a priest. Your faith isn't a job, right? A lot of people tend to kind of mix the two when people they see folks at churches and they do things, but I kind of look at it sometimes as a personal survival tool or leading or a cause, right? And this, in my opinion, makes you very relatable to just a normal person, right?
Mhm,
Your audience, the people you've helped, and faith in the trenches, for example, right? Like, would you say like the studies helped or hinder during personal trials, right?
mhm,
Sometimes knowing too much theology can make simple faith harder. I don't know, right? Maybe you could chime in on that, but then you also have the dark night of the soul, for example, right? I hear a lot of people saying, "How do you see you handle silence from God?" Because a lot of people
mhm,
also who struggle with faith, like you're not answering my prayers, right? And for someone that has gone through it and especially studying, you could feel like an intellectual puzzle or spiritual void. So what's your thoughts
mhm,
on that? Like faith in the trenches and then the dark night of the soul that I
mhm.
refer.
Yeah. Well, I guess if I may, let me take a look at a verse that I wanted to share
Yes.
related to what you actually mentioned. And this one's a popular hymn too. In Lamentations chapter 3, verses 22 to 23, the steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. So
Beautiful. Beautiful.
thank you. Talking about God's faithfulness and his mercies being new every morning, it does not depend on our current situation. If we're having a hard time, if we've waited a long time, if we feel like God's, like what you said, God's not listening, it depends not on us, but it depends on God's faithfulness, and God will God has been faithful to us in so many ways in the past, and it's important to remember that God will remain faithful no matter what. And again, it's not about what we do; it's about God's faithfulness. But God invites us to respond to His calling, to respond to His invitation to, and as He performs miracles. He has been performing miracles in the past. He performed miracles in the past, and that continues on here. In our miracles every single day.
Yeah. And that's it's beautifully said, right? And there's still miracles that people feel like they should be answered, right? I remember talking to just a random stranger, traveling, and I don't know how we got into talking about faith, right? It didn't matter the religion, but one of the things what struck me was hard times. They were saying like, yeah, I didn't understand faith until I had to rely on it,
Mhm.
and that struck me because I was like, I feel like personally, I understand faith. I rely on it to pray, to do things personally and whatnot. But that was interesting. I had faith, but I didn't understand it until I had to rely on it.
Mhm.
What's your take on that saying? Because we didn't go deep into it, but someone like yourself who's talked to many, many people, have you heard that, or what do you think that is interpreted as?
Yeah. So I guess like what you said, when we face challenges, when we are faced with problems currently, we tend to forget about the goodness of God. Um, in small, probably some, like what you said, talk to you and making you remember, making you realize that God has been faithful to you. Not probably not in ways that you want him to be, but really in little ways that help you survive, help you thrive in many ways, right? So I guess it is also important. Going back to that verse, the next verse is that in verse 24, the Lord is my portion, says my soul, therefore I will hope in him. So really here in this chapter, the poet's situation, the poet's current situation wasn't good at all, but uh, he remembered, and that God has been faithful to him, and that he needs to continue hoping. And again, that's, I would say, waiting passively versus really actively hoping and having faith in action. And it is important to be surrounded with people who will help you remind of God's faithfulness. And again, it's not about the power doesn't come from people, but it's from God being sent through people, and that's how God works.
Yeah. No, and one thing I think that a lot of people would want to know, especially folks struggling today, right? For you, you've gone through this journey. You're at an intersection. You know what you know. You have the faith. Your faith has become stronger. Can you share your experience with, all right, personal struggle and faith? You know, like how have you, how has faith helped you during whether it's your personal struggle or struggles you've had of people close to you?
We've been talking about having good relationships, right? Definitely start by maintaining a good relationship, a personal relationship with Jesus. Always, people always talk about uh, thy will be done. So, and thinking and trusting that God's will be done, actually. And so when we have a strong personal relationship with God, our plans will actually align with God's will. And part of that, again, like what I said, it's important to be surrounded with people who can actually help you strengthen your faith in God and help you be reminded of God's faithfulness. Because we all know that not every situation is good. I mean, there are trials and challenges, but again, it's important to go back to those moments that God has been faithful to you, that those moments that God actually answered your prayers. And, you got to hold on to that with having a mind and a heart that's hoping that God will continue to fulfill God's promises.
Yeah, and I think that is, to an individual, unique individual experience, right? Because I like what you said. You count, be surrounded by people, and that goes beyond obviously the faith also. But I do believe having faith in each other is also a part of that, right? Because you're talking,
Hmm.
and we talk about in business, right? Like having trusting each other, having the faith that we will be there when we need each other, right?
Hmm.
And that's very broad, but it aligns to what you just said.
Hmm.
Surround yourself with good quality people, right? That helps you go through there, right? And go through that journey. Now, one thing that's interesting, and I've always been curious about this, and mentoring the new gift. And what I mean by that is, how do there's those things where you help those who have suddenly received the gift of faith,
Hmm.
but have no background or strength in it yet. There's a difference with that, right? Like there's the spiritual newborn. They say, how does he help someone who just had a lightning bolt, for example, right?
Hmm.
And that moment that they feel they don't know the rules of religion, not yet,
Hmm.
right? And then faith versus feeling, right? I know that there's people I've talked to where they're feeling something, but then there's faith,
Hmm.
how do you share? Can you share the difference with that? Like between a passing emotion, for example, and then a genuine gift of faith, right? So spiritual newborn, faith versus feeling.
Yeah. Going back to what you said about mentoring, right? It and again going back to what we've been talking about relationships, it is important to build a genuine relationship with someone. If you like, for instance, if I wanted to share faith with someone, it's important to be intentional in building relationship first. Because if how can I reach out to someone if I feel like if if that person will feel like it's just being transactional, it's just, me like ticking marks in my checklist, right? So it's important to build that relationship, genuine relationship first. And from there you can actually share your faith and help that person grow their knowledge first, probably about God, and then later on having their own personal relationship with God. And like what you said about feelings, I mean, there's nothing wrong with actually, with our emotions, with feelings of wanting to be in a relationship with God, right? But it starts with that. But at the end of the day, it's a decision. It's your decision to who you are entrusting your life with.
So that's really good with what you said. And I like that, especially from someone coming like you that's gone through and learned and spoken to others. Here's an interesting question, right? What about your advice for the people or person or group of people who say, I believe, but I do not know how to pray, read the
Mm,
Bible, or go to church?
mhm.
That's always
That
something that's curious, right? I hear that a lot.
right, and like I said, that's not uncommon at all. It's important to again surround yourself with people who can help you with your faith, with your, as a Christian, your Christian walk, right? And there's nothing wrong with that because we are actually each of us are built to be. God actually made us to be in community, and it is important to you know ask help, ask guidance, and that's how we actually grow by being even being vulnerable, right? And really just being true to yourself and having that humility, and the, God will honor that, and God will definitely, you know, God will definitely on honor your hunger, your thirst, and really on the practical side, I would say, there are many ways of trying to reach out to people who can help you with your faith, I know there are online sites, and there are churches, right, that you can reach out to really help you, and to and because it's important to have someone guide you. I mean, the first thing is like what you
A
said.
mentor.
Yes, exactly. Like a mentor. And like what you said about people saying that, I believe in God, I have faith in him. But then there's the things that you need help with, like, how to pray and how to read the Bible. And again, definitely you need to be surrounded with people who can help you.
And I would say, like, protecting that gift of faith, right? How do you keep new faith from being crushed by the cynicism of the world, right? Is it a continuance of
Mm,
those same people? Because, the world outside, it's tough. There's a lot of things going on today, right? A
mhm,
lot
mhm,
of good information, a lot of misinformation, a lot of good people, a lot of bad people, a lot of people that are lost by definition of not knowing what to believe.
mm,
And, how do you make sure you don't lose faith? Is it just that continuation of just
mhm.
keeping up with the people that have the faith that's strong, that mentor, right? I'm
Yeah.
assuming that's what you would continue, or a person would continue, correct?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We've spent today talking about degrees, divinity, and the deep study of the sacred. But what stands out was, just even with a master's degree, like you said, right, in things of God, faith remains deeply personal, right? And sometimes it's often a messy journey, an unknown journey, right? Because
Mhm,
it's faith. And faith isn't a mountain of knowledge you have to climb to reach God, so to speak, right? It's more like a gift that we've been talking about that shows up at your doorstep when you're at the lowest. You don't need degrees to receive it, and you don't need to be strong to keep it. As we've learned today, listening to you in our conversation, sometimes the most profound theology isn't found in a Greek lexicon,
mm,
but it's like the simple courage to trust that you aren't walking alone, especially when the path gets dark. And that's what I get from you. And I love, what you're doing. And like you said, you get a chance to talk. You've helped so many people that people who are listening to us don't know about. And there's a value of a personal level of that. And gratitude, and you may not
mhm,
hear it often, but I want to thank you, you know, for everything you may not realize you've done for the people out there. Also, when we've had a chance to get together, and I have a chance to listen to you, again, it's really good. And I just want to thank you for your time today, Johnru. And I'd love to get you on again to talk more
mm,
about this life. Like I said, you have an interesting journey with what you're doing
mhm,
here, what you're working, who you're working with telecoms of Philippines, and what you still have going on. So very interesting, and
mhm.
what a background, what a background. But
Thank you so much, Aaron, for having me
thank you so
here. I really
much.
appreciate it.
Lots of love as always, and you take care, and great talking to you.
Thank you. You too. God bless.